Hello, everybody. Where's my feedback coming from? Okay, great. Welcome. Ready to get started. Welcome to the 12th School Board meeting of the Mount Mansfield Unified Union School District. I am Edie Granning, the board chair. I will get us started in just a moment. I'm going to run through the agenda and see if we have any modifications or changes to that. We have a full house online and in person. It's great, and that means we must be talking about budget and changes. So let's get right to it. Let's see. So we are calling the meeting to order. We are reviewing the agenda. We will. I wonder if we want to. I'll read through it. And okay. We have community comments first. We have a discussion about Act 127 and consider approving a seconded motion by the Finance Committee to revise the budget. Principal report from Browns River, who is Browns River, where we are having our meeting tonight. Then we have the board compliance discussion of governance management connection. After that, committee reports is on the agenda. Approving the meeting minutes from the previous meeting, and then if there's any other business, we have time for that at the very end of the meeting. I have two proposals to make. My first one is that we start with the principal report, bump that up to the top of the agenda, and then have community comments after that, or we could have community comments after the Act 127 update if folks have comments specific to that. So let's start with, our folks good with moving the principal report up to the top of the agenda? Okay, then when we, great, thank you for the thumbs online. Then when we get to community comments, we'll see if folks want to share their comments with us before or after the presentation, and we'll make the decision that way. Does that work? Great, yes, awesome. Okay, Kevin Hamilton, principal of Browns River Middle School, would you like to share with us?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for coming to Browns River Middle School. I always like to brag about our school a little bit, so I'm going to brag a little bit. Tonight, our girls A team won in double overtime. It was a pretty exciting game. Some foul shots, a three-point play at the end. So it was really exciting. So we're happy about that. Our boys are getting a little roughed up right now, though. So, but really great to see our students out there having a good time. And you know, the win was important, but they have fun. And so it's just great to be a part of this. This is a great community, and I just want to say that we're having a great year this year at Browns River Middle School. A lot of positive things going on. I could share my report with you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our advisory group that we started 2 years ago, which is a multi-grade level advisory, meaning that we have about 30 advisory groups of about 10 kids. And there's 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students in those advisories, so they're mixed up together. We wanted to start this right after we got out of COVID. We had to shut down a little bit because of potting and everything like that. But this year is our second year, and it's been a very successful year. We're seeing a lot of kids that are knowing each other more across grade levels, and it's really great to see these interactions with our 5th graders, with our 8th graders, which we didn't see too much, especially again coming out of COVID when there was a time where everybody was so isolated. I think it's really helped with the culture of our school in a positive way. We do have an artist in residence this year as well coming in through the Vermont Council of Arts, supporting our advisory group. We are building an actual nest. Our 5th grade students are the eggs, so they build eggs this week. And then our 6th grade students are going to be the fledglings, and then we get into going so on and represent them. And what we're really focusing on is belonging as a community and supporting each other. So really exciting time for our groups. Every group is doing pretty much the same thing each week as well. So it's designed as a structured program where if you were walking in around this building and you walk into advisory, they're pretty much talking about similar things. Focusing on Black History Month this week, they've selected a person to research within their group, and so you can see those on the way out on the board if you want to check that out. Some of them are already out there. So we're a really exciting time with the advisory group. Our district priorities, again, focusing on our district priorities. I always take this time to plug those early release days and the in-service days and the school across school meetings. We are collaborating with Cannibals Health than we've ever done in the past. We continue to do so. You know, in COVID, we really worked through, that was a really important part of things, and we've just continued on with that, working closely with Gretchen across the district, focusing on those strategic priorities, both of us having our guiding coalitions, working on PLCs, those professional learning communities, and working on, we're really focusing on social emotional learning as well within our school. So that's part of what our guiding coalition is focusing on. We did have a change in our, as I mentioned, our math program here. We went to illustrative math. A little bit of a change for our teachers, felt that it more aligned with what we wanted to do as a school. We're introducing those parts of that program. Two schools are working together as we introduce this to our kids. A lot of collaboration, a lot of tweaking going on in terms of that, and also trying to monitor in terms of that sequence that we're keeping in line with each other. So there's a lot of that collaboration that's going on. So it's great to work with across the district. Our anti-biased, anti-racist group, we've been focusing on the right to comfort, and there's a link within there you can take that. We also talked a lot about economic bias within our school. We thought that was something that we needed to focus on. We read a really interesting article about our biases on foods. When a child comes in with a lunch that we may not think may be the most healthy, and we try to comment on every comment on that or how we interact with the student on that. And that may be the only thing the student comes in with or that they have at home. So how our biases kind of play into those discussions with our students. So that was something that we engaged in, a really good conversation with our staff on Martin Luther King Day, that in-service day. So a lot of work going on with that anti-bias, anti-racist work. Again, talking about student engagement, you'll see that I said about 90% of our students, at least 90% of our students are engaging at least one activity within our school. That means within the clubs, within sports, within music program. Those things our students are really engaged in what we're doing here. This library, I always like to brag, is one of the largest libraries around. We have NaNoWriMo in here, which is National Novel Writers Month in November. There's about 60 kids in here writing. Hot chocolate brings them in too, but there's a lot of snacks that go on there as well. But it's just engaging them. There's a lot of writing going on. We have a newspaper club that goes on in here as well. I get interviewed every year. Usually it's about chocolate milk and white milk and trying to do what's the choices on those. But it's a great opportunity for our kids to come in here. We have Dungeons and Dragons going on. We have our Minecraft club going on with Ann over there. So we've got a lot of different opportunities that are happening with our building, and it gives kids a lot of variety. So, we have sports, we have music, we have creativity, we have an art club going on as well. So there's a lot of variety. We encourage kids to try different things as well. It's about exploring your opportunities as a middle schooler. And trying to try things that are new. We have a volleyball program that started with 10 kids about 7 or 8 years ago. We are like working at the seams. I have to have 4 adults in there now. We have about 60 kids, and the quality of play that we see in our volleyball is unbelievable. It used to be just hitting the ball over that, and then the next guy, this person is over. They're passing the ball around. And if you go out to our recess area, we have a West Coast looking kind of beach volleyball court out there. It looks pretty great. A lot of that money came from some donations and some other creative ways to do things. We do have a disc golf course out there that we're getting right now that we're building. I am going to be looking at installing some climbing structures from some ESSER funds that we have. So just a lot of opportunities for our kids to engage. I do want to brag about our music program as well. There are out of 368 students in the building, 218 of them are participating in music. So over 60% of our kids are in the music. So when we have an all-school assembly, we have more kids up on the stage than we do in the audience. And the first time that happened, I was kind of looking at things, and it was pretty interesting. I couldn't figure out where all our kids were, and then I realized they were all up on the stage. And I would encourage you, if you ever, we have concerts in the spring. come see the work that Berta does and Victoria does. It's pretty incredible, the work that these kids do, and that our staff do. Sports, obviously a big thing as well. We have a lot of opportunities that are going on, clubs. I will talk a little bit about our engagement with Browns River Action Group, our parent group. They've supported us quite a bit over the years for a lot of different opportunities. They've helped us with funding to change the curtains on the stages. And that had been probably 40 years old, and we have a beautiful looking stage now with a lot of work that Browns River Action Group has done for us. This spring, we have a group coming in called Sweethearts and Heroes. You can look at it online. It's a social and emotional wellness team that we've done some research with. Joelle Van Lent, who consults with us, recommended them to kind of come in and focus on teaching, as I said, human skills, both in school and digitally, to build empathy within our school. So they're coming in for a day. They're going to work with our 7th and 8th graders. They're going to break out into small groups. There's a lot of really positive feedback about this group coming in. So please look for information on that as well going forward. Parent attendance, it continues to be high. At our events, we have open houses where this is pretty packed in here, and we've kind of created it, and then it's scavenger hunt. So we give them a list, and they go and find, their EXP teacher, or they'll go and find their NEST teacher. So it's not just going into the classroom. We're trying to get them to reach into other areas where you normally don't go. And then they hand it in, and they win it with a raffle at for Browns River swag, so they can win it, wear a hoodie with the Browns River information on it. We did have our first fine arts night last spring. If you walk through our building right now, you can see some artwork that is hanging, especially outside here. There's some in the hallways downstairs. Franny Willard, we hired 2 years ago, is an amazing teacher, connects with kids. And the amount of artwork that we have now is incredible. And when our fine arts night was here, every wall was filled with artwork, and it was just amazing to see the talents of our kids come out. We're going to be running that again this year as a second one. We are probably going to tie some music into that as well. Maybe have a little bit of a string quartet going on with our strings players and everything. So it's really a positive thing that's happening here at Browns River Middle School. But I'll open up for questions.
In your advisory program, is it similar to like others where like kids are assigned to a teacher and that's kind of their like?
Yes. So they have that. They'll have that person for 4 years, theoretically. Yes. So if there's a retirement or anything, we have to reconfigure things a little bit, but they will have their advisory person for 4 years and have those same kids. So the 8th graders go out, those 7th graders stay in that same group, and then the 5th graders go. Yes.
Great update. Thanks for the report. This is my first year after like 6 years of not being personally involved in this school. So I feel like it's missing out on things, but it's like every year you come to us with almost like more and more participation in co-curriculars, and it seems like the involvement, I don't know how you can get it more than it is, but it's like every year you're doing well, much better than last year. And coming out of COVID seems great. It's almost like we need more facilities to keep up with the demand.
I would love a theater.
Yeah. One down the road. So it's all good. My kind of critical question, which I asked parents in my same collect to at the high school, how the transition went from middle school to high school. And it may be that I lead them a little bit, but it does seem like academically and the amount of work that kind of hits the students when they hit the high school compared to where they are in the middle school seems like a pretty significant step change. And I was curious if that's by design, if that's still coming out of COVID, if that's, do you get that feedback?
I do, and there's a pretty big philosophical discussion on homework, the intention of homework. And that's something that we are having discussions on, yes, in terms of preparing them for the amount of work that they'll get at home. There is a philosophical debate on whether or not that's the most appropriate thing for middle schoolers. And then, but we also know, yes, I do hear that as
So
well.
how is that debate happening?
Talking within our classes, I will say that there's not a actual like group that's looking at it right now, but it's definitely something that we've talked about on an informal basis within our teams at that level. So we do not have, we've talked about having like specific amounts of work assigned and kind of, having that kind of as a standard across, because I could even look at teams and say that there's probably different levels of homework within the structure of this building as well. So that's something that we could certainly take a look at and see what we need to do. And I can talk to Mike about that as well.
I'm not suggesting, I mean, that's all in your space. I'm not
Right.
suggesting doing anything about it. It's just, I'm hearing that it's,
Good.
and I'm just wondering if that's an actual, gap and if it's intentional or something that.
I would say it's not intentional. I would say that I've heard the discussion. I don't always know exactly what the reality is, you know what I'm saying, in terms of that, other than anecdotally from that. But I have heard that, and I will say, I hear that in other districts as well, from other middle schools as well.
And then one more quick question on the receiving side, you have two schools, sending schools primarily, one small, one much larger. Is that working? Is there any concerns there with the tied back to the size of the schools that, and the services that one elementary might have over the other, or do you not?
No, I don't see that. We have a pretty good transition process that we go through. So I connect with Jen Cote and with Todd now, but before Vicky. And we have a really thorough process in terms of the special educators starting usually a little bit earlier in terms of that transition process. And then we meet with the teachers, I meet with the principal, the guidance counselors, and we gather all that information. And so, I think being in the middle, we kind of hear both ends of the, I try to find the balance on that, I guess, in terms of, the concerns about coming from elementary school and then the concerns about going. So we get the in and the out, whereas the other ones just get the, right, they don't hear from the colleges, right? And so, right, yeah. So that's that. I hear both and try to balance that out in that discussion. I will say, and we have a good transition process going through the high school too, in terms of them coming here. They've already started there, coming down and talking to our teachers and talking with our kids. I had special educators connecting and 504 coordinators meeting as well, and talking about those needs for those kids as they transition through. So, and I'm going to say in terms of that transition from the difference between UCS and JES, I don't see it. I don't see that difference. It's not like I can say, oh, that's a UCS kid. I've heard those stories before. It's not like I can pick them out.
Any other questions for Kevin from the board? No. Great, thank you so much.
Thank
You are welcome to stay. You do not have
a
to.
little bit.
Okay, great. All right, so then my question is, should we take roll call? Pat, do we need to take roll call, or are you good with who's here?
Hi, the only one I haven't noticed is Susan here.
I don't think she is.
Okay, I think we have everyone else.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So we have community comments before the Act 127 update. I don't know how many folks are here to make community comments about the concerns with the budget and budget changes. So I think what I'd like to do is if there's somebody who has community comments that is not about the budget, maybe we take those now. And if you have comments about the budget, we'll do that after we hear the update so that everyone is on the same page with what's going on. Is that a fair way to do this?
Yeah, fine.
Okay. So anyone from the community who wants to make a comment that is not about the budget, just pop your hand up now and I will I will read what it says. It says, community comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes per person. The board requests that participants clearly state their name, place of residence, and topic of comment. The school board will take no action on items raised during community comments, and dialogue exchanges will be for clarification. Unless immediate action is required, action by the school board will occur at a subsequent meeting. And we may have a little more of a discussion when it comes to the budget issue, but we do also have another budget presentation meeting on Thursday. So we'll kind of have to see how that goes. I really want folks to be able to understand what's going on with all the changes. This is an unusual year. So I'm not seeing anybody putting their hands up that they have a community comment that is not about the budget. That accurate? Okay. All right, then let's move on to the next agenda item and we'll come back to community comments. We have Act 2027 update discussion and consider approval of seconded motion by the Finance Committee to revise and rewarn the 24-25 budget based on proposed changes to Act 127. And just to update everyone, the Finance Committee met right before this meeting and did approve a new budget. So there is a new budget coming to this board for approval. I'm going to back up first and talk about Act 127, the changes. That makes sense, right? Just to set kind of what's going on here. So in 2022, the legislature passed Act 127, which was designed to change the way funds are raised for schools. It's designed to give schools that have more poverty, more sparsity, and English language learners more money to work with those students. It is, however, a raising funds mechanism. So just go with that. So what it does is it changes the way we count students, and based on that, our tax base changes based on the number of students and their composition in our schools. Earlier this legislative session, the legislature realized that the 5% cap that was in that law designed to give school districts who were losing a tax base, so we would have to pay more, a softer landing. They realized that 5% cap was going to cost the ed fund. It was going to encourage school districts to spend a lot of money, and it was going to inflate the ed fund by. I'm going to look at Jana for a second because she's here from the legislature. Was it a $200 million increase this year?
I think the data point that we all heard is education spending is up in Vermont this year, nearly 250 million. So yeah.
Sorry, I was slow. Thank you. Yeah, so $250 million based on estimated budgets, which would increase tax rates significantly. So then the legislature has now has a proposal that is it's starting in the House, going to the House floor probably on Wednesday. It was just approved out of 2 committees and is now ready to go there. Where the funding, the way we count students stays the same. The softer landing for districts like ours that are going to have a lower tax base because of this is not a 5% cap, but it becomes a cents off based on the percent that our district is losing tax capacity. So it looks right now like our district is losing 13% tax capacity. So we would get a 13 cents off discount based on the tax rate that is calculated that we can get into. And Finance Committee folks, if I'm saying something that needs to be explained differently, please slow me down. So because we no longer have that 5% cap, which allowed us to put some additional building construction, building repair, building improvement, necessary improvements in the budget, The finance committee today decided to remove about $5.5 million from the budget that we had proposed and warned, and is actually, if you pick up your ballot early, it's on a ballot right now. So the finance committee says we now have to pay every penny of that. There's no benefit to us to have that money in the budget for this year. We're going to figure out another way to do that in the upcoming years, because it has to happen. It doesn't have to happen right this minute. It has to happen in the next 5 years, probably 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. It has to happen soonish. Yeah, 5 years. So we'll figure out a way that is more palatable and hopefully affordable for our taxpayers. And so we're proposing a $60 million budget. I have the number instead of a $65 million budget, but I get that. I will give you exact numbers. We had a $65,623,048 budget, and we're decreasing that to $123,048 budget. So $5.5 million decrease, and that's coming forward. You want to add something? Do you want to add something?
The only thing I would add to that is, Edie mentioned that in fiscal year 25, we get a 13-cent reduction, and that tapers off. That number reduces 20 cents each year until the 5-year period runs out. So
20%.
Sorry, I said cents. Sorry. So 13 cents in 25, 10 cents in 26, 8, and 5 and 3.
And the proposed law also gives us the ability to rewarn and extend the vote beyond March 5th to a deadline of April 15th, which is what we would need to do.
So Lisa, anything from finance that?
I don't think, I think it's also important to understand too, that even with this discount, the budget is what we need. And it's still going to be a 4.5% increase to the taxes. It's just, we weren't frivolous in terms of how we calculated things to begin with, even with adding the $5.5 million for facilities.
So, board, we have a lot of things to talk about here. We can go through the budget. We can talk about the mechanism for changing the vote. We can talk about what it looks like going forward. I want to start with the budget does anybody on the board have specific questions about what's in the budget, what's not in the budget? Anybody from the finance discussion want to share something specific that stood out to them from that? I want to make sure that we're all in a good understanding of what is in the budget and what is not in the budget. I know we talked about this in December and we talked about this in January, so if folks have talked about this enough, I'm totally understanding of that. Yes, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could hear what the seconded motion is so that we know what we'll be considering later on.
Yes. The seconded motion is the $60 million, $123,048 budget. So the decrease of $5.5 million from the original amount.
And how do we address the potential changing of the date of the vote?
So that's going to be for the board to talk about. So we haven't talked about that yet. So the law that is getting, and the VSBA about 5:20 today has information on, right? We're
17.
Yeah. Has information on what the steps are that we need to take here. So things that we need to note is we're under COVID rules until July 1, which means that we can make changes to anything we're voting on, because because there have been so many issues with illness and changes and stopping and all of that. So we have that flexibility right now, which is unusual and beneficial for us at this moment, because that means we were able to talk about this at a regular meeting and not at a special meeting. What the new law that is going to pass at some point soon, right, which is proposing, is that we would be required to have the new budget passed by the 15th of April rather than town meeting day. So we have already surveyed the 5 town clerks, and I believe it's April 2nd, which is the first Tuesday in April, that is their preferred date to do the vote. So we would have a warning to do the vote on that day. So what would happen, and there's a little bit of complication here, because the other part of our warning that we can change or don't have to change is we have our moderator, our clerk, and our treasurer that we would have to elect also. So we can have that election happen on town meeting day if we so choose, or at the same time as the budget. I haven't thought on that, but we can, I don't know if we're going to talk about that first or later. So this is stuff that I've been thinking about non-stop. Questions? Yeah.
The the 5 million that we're taking out of the budget.
Yep.
Was in the budget, but was under the cap, so it wasn't affect the tax rate.
Correct. The 5 million did not affect the tax rate. I'm repeating because I don't know folks online. Can folks online hear, Gail?
I can speak up,
Okay, speak up.
but I can't, so I could visualize that, but I can't visualize what's this 13 cents going to do? The 13 cents is coming off the tax rate, but I don't know what tax rate it's coming off of.
So, yep, so we have a slide. Nicole and John prepared a presentation and a slide of all of this, so we can take a look at what that looks like.
Yeah, because that's why I came, to find out. We're changing from something that wasn't to something now that is, probably.
Yep.
Based on our great legislative process that you know so well.
So this is a summary of the changes from the previously warned budget to what was proposed and seconded today by the Finance Committee. So the top 2 lines are showing total FY25 budgeted expenditures and education spending, both decreasing by the 5.5 million in buildings and facilities funds. Then we move down to the preliminary homestead tax rate. So that's the tax rate prior to any discounting mechanisms, which is decreasing 13% from the previously warned version to now. Then the discount mechanism previously was the 5% cap. Now it's the 13 cents. So leaving us with a discounted homestead tax rate of approximately 1 cent lower than the budget that was previously warned. And what that means year over year from the current 24 homestead tax rate is a 5 cent increase, or 4.49%. So we're lower by 51% than was previously, 0.51 of what was previously warned.
And just so everyone knows, these slides are all attached to the agenda. If anyone wants to take a look at them, if you're at home on your computer, if you're here on your computer. They're not attached to this.
I don't believe.
They will be attached to this agenda momentarily. They should be. The budget proposed summary.
We didn't put the slides in there, we did it. Finance Committee.
Okay, they were on this, so they'll be attached momentarily then. Apologies. They were on the finance. So if they're on the Finance Committee, and this is just a slide presentation, all of the other documents, this is a way to summarize all of the rest of the information that was attached.
Is that helpful?
Oh, yeah, sure. so that if you stay on the discounted tax rate under the cap, the tax rate is gonna be $1.2669.
Yes.
That tax rate did not include the 5 million that wasn't gonna be on the tax rate.
That tax
Yes.
rate did include
Those capped.
the 5.5.
Yeah. Because it was capped at 5%.
You can say it either way, it means the
It was
same
capped at
thing.
5%,
With
so
capped
that
at 5%.
cap did not come onto that tax rate because it was already discounted.
Right.
So now the 13 cents is, we don't get the 5 plus million, but our actual tax rate is a penny less. The 13 cents makes it a penny less than it was before.
Which shows you how inexpensive that $5 million would have been for our taxpayers had the law stayed the way it was, right?
Yeah, because there's some from coming from someplace else. Now there's nothing coming from some.
The other thing that they did, was, or the AOE, based on modeling, is they increased the base yield amount. And that had an influence on the tax rate compared to what we were sharing before.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah. So because the preliminary budgets showed about $250 million more in expected education spending. With the law change, that expected education spending should be decreased significantly. Maybe not 280 million, but at least 50 million. And the yield is the equalizing mechanism. So in Vermont, every school district creates a budget. All those budgets are sent to the state. The state totals them up, divides up the amount of money that's in the budget, and says, okay, now districts need to make up the rest. And that yield is what sets what the rest is. So that number changes, it fluctuates until all the school budgets are passed. And then it's finalized in April, early May, and that's set. So we never know exactly what our tax rate will be when we pass our budget. It's just even more, it's just how it is here. And it's not, in a year like this, it's even more complicated than normal. But yeah, that's Ethan.
Thanks. So question, I guess, and I think it's related to this conversation here, is that top line, which is budgeted expenditures, and for FY25 is 60 million, but the line below it, that total education spending is 49 and change, almost 50 million. So the school district has about a $50 million expense, but we essentially are sending $60 million to the state because we are a sending town as opposed to a receiving town. No, I got that confused.
There are no more sending towns in Vermont. About 30%, 35% of the tax money is raised from property taxes, and the rest is raised from sales and use or non-homestead taxes. So nobody is a sending town anymore. Everybody only pays a certain percentage. It's the making up the difference amount. Most of the tax dollars don't come from property taxes.
So help me understand the difference in those two lines then, because I was thinking of like different wording.
What's the difference between education spending and total budgeted expenditures? That's your question? That's a good question. So, yeah.
So it's the, ed spending is non-property tax, revenue. So that's like IDA, special education is the biggest one. Any revenue that isn't generated by the tax rate.
Okay. And you're saying 30%, I'll have to think about that math a little bit, but 30% of education spending money is generated through property taxes.
There's two, there's non-homestead property tax, homestead property tax, and then there's other revenues that
Other
make
sources.
up like the lottery, some sales, sales and use.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's a very good question.
Other questions, board members? Let's, Kevin, you've had a chance to talk yet? In this meeting?
Leading.
Go ahead. I'm trying to give everyone a chance. You spoke so much during the finance committee meeting, I'm confused. No, I'm kidding.
I think more comments than question. So we've talked at this meeting on two topics. One about the date of the budget vote, and then what should the budget be? And I'm very supportive of pushing out the date of our vote. I've been that way and tried to be vocal that we should be pushing it out as far as we can until we know what the state's gonna eventually tell us our budget needs to be. I feel it's premature to make any changes on our proposed budget until a law is actually passed that changes the current law that is currently informing our budget decision. So I was one of the only people who said no to in the finance committee, just because I feel like it's cart before the horse. But assuming that the law changes the way that we're anticipating, I think it does make sense to reduce our budget, to reduce the anticipated tax burden on our district. The taking the $5.5 million out kind of brings and then incorporating this 13-cent discount kind of gets our budget into that similar 4 to 5% increase that we've been kind of planning on. So it kind of washes it out. So it makes sense, but I just feel like we should allow the process to go in the right order. You know, let the law get changed, and then we'll be ready to adjust the budget. And we should cancel the annual meeting vote now because we can, and just wait until the process completes. But that's my personal opinion and not the will of the committee, I don't think.
The committee was just presenting an updated budget, and if you are, the board doesn't have to pass it today. And everything that you said, I was just reading through, is within the guidelines as possible. So we can choose to do that. That is a possible option for us. Okay, so we have 2 more hands up over here. No?
I did have a hand up, yeah. Now I have 3 questions.
No.
If we do what Kevin proposes, which seems wise to me, what's the risk of that? Is there any risk associated with it? Why wouldn't we wait if there's things are still in play and there's no specific risk associated with it?
There's no risk. The question is having a special meeting, and school break is coming up. So
Oh, I see.
the more.
So the risk is that we wouldn't have attendance at our special meeting because we're all out of town.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. My second question, and I didn't go through I don't know if I've missed it or I just didn't see it. The $5 million reduction, or $5.5 million reduction, is that specifically just in physical plant upgrades that we've taken out of the budget? So there's no staff impact there, or
That's correct.
programmatic?
That's correct.
And then my third question is that I tried to figure out from some of the pre-reads if there was a change to our equalized student number. No, so nothing's changed there. So do we have a sense of what that number is now?
Long-term weighted ADM, our pupils for 25 are frozen.
Okay, so there's, can you just say more about that? I'm still working through some of the implications for the number of how much funding we're getting per student, how that's changing. I know that that's not specific to what's been developing in this past week, but I think it's important for people on the phone to understand that, and also just, I could use a refresher.
Yeah. So each year, data managers from school districts upload information to the state on our average daily membership.
Mhm.
And then a 2-year average of that is what our weighting, the new weights are applied to. So economically disadvantaged, sparsity, there's no weighting for sparsity. And
The age of student, there's a,
correct grade, and what is the big one I'm missing? English language learners. So once those weights are applied, the AOE sends it back out to schools, to districts to say, please review. We go through multiple iterations of that, and finally those were frozen, set for FY 25 about a month or so ago.
And it's a whole new system.
what's
So
that?
it used to be equalized pupils, and now it's long-term weighted ADM.
So if you look at the slide that's on the screen, you can see that in fiscal year 2024, the way that the pupils were counted was called equalized pupils, and we had almost 2,500 students counted for this purpose. With the new weighting, we are counting almost 3,700 students, and it looks great because we have an increase of about almost 50% in students. The average increase was closer to 60% increase in students. So if it was about 61% increase in students, statewide was the average. So we have an increase in students. Everybody has an increase in students. Our increase is less than the average, which is why we have a smaller ability to raise revenue. So I'm going to go to Gail first because he had his hand up. Oh, you want it to be simple?
That's where the 13% comes from.
13 cents.
Yes, no, the 13 cents and 13% come from, yes,
Yes.
that,
It comes
exactly.
13% and then they turn that into 13 pennies.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah, really.
exactly. Yeah,
So on the last slide,
the one that we were on
tax.
previously or this one?
our tax rate, well, I guess it's, yeah, still here. I don't know what that one is. So without that 13, put that 13% back on our tax rate, what would it be?
The 1.3879, $1.38, $1.39. Which, Brett, if you can go up 2 slides. Oh, the other way up, sorry, not 4. So this is, oh, no, back 1. Yeah. So if we look at our tax rate from fiscal year 22, it was 1.48. And then the 23 and 24, there was a surplus in the education fund. So the tax rate was bought down, was decreased because of the surplus, because of extra money, because of the COVID pandemic. And so it was 1.3 and then 1.21. And this year, the estimate with the 13 cents off is 1.26, which is still less than it was in 2021, which is not there, which was 1.47, 22 and 23. More questions from the board? Yes, Kevin.
So the 13 cents, the discount, there's a whole separate calculation that one can go into to try to figure that out. I think the state spent a lot of time trying to come up with an apples to apples comparison of last year, or this year's pupil count to next year's pupil count with the changing of the law. And the fact that we're weighting students a lot more heavily makes it, you have to look at the state share. So some of the terminology we hear is the state share of the pupils, because that percentage is what is in apples to apples. And then they're comparing this year's percentage to next year's percentage. And if you're going down, then you're considered disadvantaged. We're disadvantaged, and that's how they come up with the how many cents of a discount we're going to get. But we can't influence that. It's nice, to understand it. But at the end of the day, we're going to be told you get a 13 cent reduction. They've come up with a fair way of doing it. Trust us, or if you want the details, go look at it. And then every year after that 13 cents is going to go down a little bit. So for those of us who are familiar with the merger that we went through, it was a very similar model. And I brought that up at the committee meeting, where the first year you got the full discount, and the next year you go less of a less of a. So every year, we're gonna be seeing the effects of the reduction of that discount, and we have to raise that either through an increase in tax rate or offset it with some other magic money. So we're gonna be talking about this for 5 years and explaining that, oh, and your tax rate is going up 2 cents because we lost 2 or 3 cents of the discount last year, but yay, we're in the final year. We never have to talk about this again until it comes up again, like now, but this is gonna be around a while, if it passes.
Go ahead, Gail.
But our 13% drop is a drop on the student population of the state. That's where they get the 13%, the way they're counting it from last year to the next year.
It's, the 13% is, our ratio of students in 24 changed to our ratio of students in
And
25.
that's right, we're 13% less.
Yeah.
But that's hard to explain when you're showing a chart that we have a lot more students. being
Yes.
counted.
Yes,
That's
yes,
the
that's
problem.
what I keep saying. This is very simple.
Can you just talk about that? I would like to hear from you about that. And you just said that's the problem, so I'd like you to hear you say some more
Well-
things. Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Me,
No, John.
John.
Well,
That's
I
okay, I
mean,
know.
you're losing, there's 2 different ways they're counting students. So,
That's what I was asking about Edie that I was trying to get at, so.
right,
yeah.
we're not, our student population is flat, so we haven't gone up 50%.
Yeah.
But the way they're weighting students, it's more robust. And that's the terminology that they use. So it's really hard for people to understand the change because they really are using 2 different formulas. But this isn't, I think, an apples to apples comparison because it is taking what real numbers for this year and saying, okay, what happened to your share of the big pile of students in Vermont? And for us, it was a 12.75%, which they round to the nearest number. It was a 12.75% decrease in the new way they're calculating.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
so relative to our peers, which is all the other school districts in Vermont, our funding is essentially decreasing by 13%.
Our
Student.
tax capacity, yes, is going down
Okay,
compared to our neighbors. So theirs is going up more than us.
So our portion of pupils was around, you can tell me if I'm wrong, was it around 3%?
Yeah.
For this year. And next year, using the new calculations, it's 2.87% of the total students in Vermont.
okay,
So that difference is 13. It's not really 13, but
Yeah.
if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That difference between
Rounded.
those 2 percentages is 13%, and that's where the 13 cents comes from. So it's taking 2 completely different systems and trying to figure out a way through proportions, if you remember algebra, and making them apples to apples, so that a difference can be shown.
That's more accurate.
All right, so I'm not seeing board hands. I'm sure more board members have questions, but here's my procedural question. While we're in deliberation on what to do with the seconded motion, because that's what we're in right now, we have a seconded motion from the finance committee. Could we, Andrew, maybe this is a question for you and Kevin, because you seem to be our parliamentarians. Can we open it up to community comments at this point, or do we have to vote before we do that?
We should open it up for discussion.
I was gonna propose that to the board. Is this an appropriate time for community comments?
Well, we vote. Yeah.
Sure.
I believe it is an appropriate time.
Great.
Andrew
I
and
could be
both
wrong,
agree on
but
If you both agree, then that's, yeah. Okay, so then, folks from the community, would you like me to read the parameters on community comments again? I think we'll be a little more flexible, maybe. We'll kind of see how it goes, but, and we do have 2 more opportunities for community discussions on this. So please don't feel like this is the only opportunity to talk. But community comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes per person. The board requests that participants clearly state their name, place of residence, and topic of comment. The school board will take no action on items raised. Well, we're going to be taking some action. So I'm going to leave that part out but it's because it's a warned item on the budget that we're discussing. So that's the only reason that we can take action on it at this meeting. Dialogue exchanges will be for clarification. Yes. All right. So community members online. Fred, if you would just put it on full screen for me, that would be great. And I can see who's there. And in person, anybody who has a comment that you'd like to share, please pop or a question that you have about this, please pop your hand up and we will do our best to get to everyone. Yes. And so name and town. And if you want to come just a little closer, the microphone is right in front of Alice.
So my name is Marcy Harden. I'm from Richmond, and I'm here to talk about or to comment on what you've all been discussing on Act 127. It's disappointing to see where we are in this budgeting process, and I think you probably all agree with me on that. It surprises me that more people weren't questioning how all the spending, $250 million, resulting from the 5% homestead tax rate cap, was going to be paid for. And I'd like to focus on homestead tax rate cap because we all talk about 5% tax rate cap, and it was 5% homestead tax rate cap. I hope as the board moves forward, you'll consider three things. What will our spending decisions mean for all taxpayers in the state? I think of the golden rule when I say that. With a statewide education fund, we are all in this together. And I think affordability is a real issue for many people in this state. Number two, is there a plan for a glide path for the next 5 years as our share of the education fund decreases based on the new pupil weighting system? I think we're facing a rather daunting situation. And I think a plan for how we're going to manage that would be really helpful. And then probably last but not least, can we agree that the education funding system in Vermont is simply too complex? This Act 127 situation has clearly illuminated that problem. It's time for school boards and superintendents and your associations to advocate strenuously for a simpler system. Think of the money that could be spent on education if we didn't have such a convoluted system. For example, money spent by the tax department, agency of education, secretary of state, town clerks, accountants, superintendents and their staff, school staff, superintendents and school board association staff, legislators, legislative staff, to name a few. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody wants a copy of it.
Sure. Thank you. Adam, if you could name and town, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Adam Burnett from Richmond. I just kind of had two, hopefully, quick questions. Is it safe to say that the new budget is basically what would have been put forward had the 5% cap provision not been in place? And second, do you have any comparisons or graphics that show sort of what the tax rate situation would have looked like were Act 127 not a thing? You know, like, or I guess said another way, under the former pupil weighting system, what would all of this have shaken out to be and look like? Mostly asking because I'm just curious what the actual impact to community disadvantaged like we are actually looks like.
Your first question, the answer is yes. Your second question, that's a lot of extra work to figure out. I don't know that Nicole
Is that
done any of that.
Are you meaning, just a clarifying question, are you meaning what it would have been like under the previous equalized pupil system?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's hard because
Assuming
we,
equalize people's.
we could do it, I think, probably relatively quickly if you give us a minute. We probably have to use this, our same equalized pupil number, because they didn't do it that way this year. But
Yeah, so it would be a guess. It wouldn't be accurate. We get the numbers from the state and this would be our guess of what the state would have told us our equalized pupil numbers were, right? Because we give them information and then they say yes or no and often change it. So
it would have been less. I mean, I think we can say that pretty confidently.
About $1.30 would be the preliminary. Well, there would be no discount mechanism in place, so it's about $1.30, which is
More.
the quick estimate, it would have cost us more than this year because there would be no discount. But that's just a really quick estimate. I wouldn't put a whole lot of.
And that's again with a yield, the 24 yield
right.
had additional.
Now, yeah, so what,
Ed fund
it would be a
surplus.
lot less than that, Adam, if the yield was the same, but they dropped the yield a lot.
Right. So yeah, so no, that's not even close to the right number because we're using the yield based on last year that had, that was bought down with surplus COVID money. So no, we can't give you that number. Sorry.
That is fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other community comments?
Kevin, what were you gonna say?
Well, it's community. You have an answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the way, if somebody asked me that question, I was wondering how we were going to answer it, but we can't come up with that answer ourselves because so much of that calculation is based on what other districts would be doing in that scenario and how that affects the statewide numbers. But if you had to guess, you would just go back to what you're increasing your budget by, right? We're going to be spending 8.5% more money next year than we are this year. So all things considered, you would expect your tax rate to go up the same amount if you don't have any other factors in place. With this discount, it's going up, 4.5%. But I think if we were under normal situations where the student weightings were not changing and we had a kind of a similar with no new mandates or anything, I think it would be an 8% tax rate that we'd be going into because we're spending that much more.
Yeah, but I don't think that's right either because our tax rate is never a direct, tax increase is never direct, which is why it's.
Because
really,
there's always other things changing.
Yes.
This is a big thing that's changing. But
Yes.
although if nothing changes, then that's what you would expect.
The yield would be different.
Right.
Because things are changing.
Right.
Because there's one surpluses, because there's other stuff happening.
Anyway, it's just very difficult to answer.
It is.
Jim, you want to, name and town?
Yeah, my name is Jim Carroll and I live in Jericho. And we're trying, let's call it in the other world, the ones that you live in when you're not here. We're trying to figure out what are the things that could be done to enhance the quality of education, increase job satisfaction, and eliminate areas of unnecessary expense or waste. And the voodoo box in Montpelier, I've asked some very intelligent people for a very long period of time to explain to me where the bottom, top, and sides are of the voodoo box. And I thought I was getting close to at least having a comprehension of what the raw materials were that were going into the voodoo box. And now, in effect, the whole voodoo box has been changed. And it appears as though there's a form of social engineering that someone up there, maybe on top of the voodoo box, is saying, well, we think that this is the better way to do it. And if you remember back to when they thought that taxing Stowe was a really good thing because that was all the wealthy people and we'll take the money from Stowe and split it. So I'm sitting here and I like to understand it. I don't. I'm not sure if I dove into the voodoo box and swam around for a long time, even with all the time that I've spent in the financial services business, I'm not sure I can figure it out. But what concerns me is if we don't have a real practical budget that we do based upon logic, reasoning, qualitative and quantitative results of what our objectives are, to make good business decisions before we go to the voodoo box. Because the voodoo box, we don't have an awful lot of direct control over. But as a citizen, I've watched anti-business, anti-housing, anti-development, and a lot of pro stuff under the auspices of nature and conservation. And I'll just say to you, I've been a scuba diver for 60 years, and scuba diving in Lake Champlain that I did in the 60s, forget about it, because all of our conservation, all of our nature work has not kept the erosion and all of the other things that have in effect ripped the state and flown it into Lake Champlain or all the other places. So what is the formula that an intelligent citizen concerned wants to vote? How do they extract some logic? Are we being adversely affected by the anti-development that has occurred in Jericho, which has resulted, I think it's like 95% white. You know, so that's what we've done. You can say we didn't mean to do it, but the reality is that housing is incredibly expensive. And I'm going to throw another question in here because I don't know what the answer to this one is. But the houses in Jericho have been selling for well over 100% more than the assessed value. So there's 200 and some odd towns in Vermont that are now having to go through reassessments. What happens when we get reassessed from $70 to $80 million grant list, and all of a sudden it's $160 million grant list, when those numbers get thrown into the voodoo box? And if we don't have some consciousness of how the voodoo box works, then how do we intelligently vote? How do we make good decisions about what we should and should not be doing? And I'll just use an example. I think Vermont Gas has now gotten to the high school. And in that $5 million, maybe there was something about going from a wood-fired boiler to a gas boiler or something, or whatever. By taking the $5 million out, are we actually going to increase our cash-on-cash expenses because we're not insulating a building, or we're not updating windows, or we're not adding to a heating system? So that when we're moving $5 million in because we think that's the only way we're going to get these improvements done, oh my God, if everybody does that, then so the voodoo box says, oh, we're taking your $5 million away. Standing on the sidelines, we all sit here and say, how can we do anything correctly when they operate the voodoo box that way?
Yeah, so thank you. I heard two direct questions, so I'm going to try to answer them. The voodoo box, I'm assuming you mean the education, the system to figure out education.
The algorithm
taxes.
that
Yeah.
takes your 2,400 students and makes them look like 3,600.
Yep.
Takes your
Yep.
13,000, makes it look like 9.
Yep.
That's
So-
a voodoo box.
So previously, we counted students. We figured out the number of students that we had, and they were weighted by their grade level that the students were in, assuming that the younger students cost less to educate, the older students cost more to educate. And it's been that way for decades,
20 years.
for forever.
A long time.
That's how we've always kind of done that.
And there was a weighting per yellow students in poverty, but it changed.
But it changed. So now we have English language learners in a block grant. We have special education in a block grant. We still have a weighting for the grade level of students, but it's less, right? So that's a smaller impact to the total count of students. And a bigger impact to this total count of students is the poverty weighting. So if in our 5 towns, not just Jericho, in our 5 towns, we had more of a socioeconomic variety, it would have impacted our budget differently. Yes, that's the answer to that question. And we've been talking about that for a couple of years here to say, how do we support our towns in providing more affordable housing, because we saw this coming, and so that has been a discussion in our town. And I already lost what the other question was. I should have written it down, sorry. Oh, no, I guess that is it. That is the second answer, is the town piece.
Oh, and then have we done ourselves a disservice by removing? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we still have some money, $500,000 in our budget to make sure that the things, the physical plant issues that have to get taken care of this year are still in the budget. The $5.5 million were things that have to happen in the next 4 or 5 years. And so those were taken out. We'll have to figure out how to pay for those as they become the thing that has to happen this year, which is how we've been doing it for years. There's a lot of discussion in the legislature about school construction funding. We'll see what happens with that and how we can access money if there is money available. But we will be planning for that, right? Like today, we're talking about the budget vote for next year's budget that has to happen by April 15th. We have a 5-year plan on construction, on plant and the building impact that we have to make. We have that. We have to obviously change it every year and figure out, make sure that it's accurate. But yes, we are doing our best to plan for it as everything changes around us.
Now, can you segregate your capital expenditures from, let's just say, teacher pay, current expense, and amortize that through a separate bond so that it doesn't have the same effect as a $5 million one-shot deal?
Of course, right? But we were hoping to do it this year when there was a cap, and it would cost our actual taxpayers less. So now we would have to do it the other way. Yes.
So you can actually go out and bond for it and amortize it.
We won't be doing that this year, but yes, we could. Yep. Okay, so I heard, Ethan, do you have an answer for that?
No, I was just worried that we were getting into a back and forth discussion as opposed to community comments. So I just was.
Yep. Thank you. Other questions from community members? Do you have questions? You're not community members, but I'm sensing restlessness, which makes me wonder if you're holding questions.
No.
Okay. Okay, so board, we have options. We can withdraw the current budget as it is and set a date for set a date for a future vote.
We would need to, the finance committee approved a seconded motion to go to the board for the $60 million, $60,123,048, which is a revision from what we had warned. So that's coming to the board. Board can, table that or approve it.
And that's the first thing that we have on the table.
Yep.
The other thing that we can do today is vote on rescheduling the date of the school district budget vote to a later date. And we would, if we choose to do that, we would have to be very clear on whether we are voting on only the budget at a later date and not the district positions, the clerk, moderator, and treasurer. If we choose to hold those 3 off, just to put it out there, we would probably have to appoint a treasurer in the meantime so that someone can sign checks between town meeting day when their term ends and the vote.
I'd have to check that out. But I will say that, we We bought the,
We're figuring this out
we
right now.
bought the
because
ballots.
The information just came in.
So we have ballots.
Yep.
And the town clerks, I think, would prefer to not do the budget, but vote on the positions, and that's something that we can do. That's the feedback that.
They give
Separate
it to
pieces
you.
of paper.
No, they're all on the same piece of paper. So what happens is you don't, we would have, this would all require educating the voter, right? And so we would just share with the voters that the budget that is listed there is not the budget that we are voting on, and that vote is null. Right, so before the clerks even send it out, they can write null or void or cross it off or something. There's all kinds of guidance for them on this. So, but so we have lots of choices here, but right now, do we want to approve the seconded motion? Andrew has a hand up. He's patiently waiting for us. Go ahead, Andrew.
All right, thank you, Edie. Yeah, we certainly have a number of questions in front of us. In terms of changing the budget, I think Kevin articulated, I think I agree with the view that Kevin articulated a while ago, that we ought to wait until the law actually changes before we change our budget. The other issues in terms of timing, and as a member of the Board of Civil Authority in Bolton, I want to point out that this is a burden, particularly for small towns, to be having a separate vote. And, you know, in particular, I mean, I would defer to town clerks, but in terms of having two school votes, that also means that we have to send two members of our Board of Civil Authority on town meeting day away from counting town votes to go to Camelcent Middle School to help to bring the ballots to the school. So that's kind of an additional burden that happens there, which is a difficulty in small towns. So, you know, in my view, we should determine today what date we're going to have the budget vote, but that we should delay until the law is changed, whether or not we change the vote that we're presenting to voters, if that all makes sense.
Yes, I was asking Kevin, if that's what your minority opinion was at the committee meeting, right? That we just put it all off until we know something. And I would agree with that. I assume you can make a motion, I don't know, to table what we have, because I think we ought to table the budget, but I also don't, I believe we ought to table the whole vote until April 2nd, whatever date that was, because I'm concerned about town clerks and that work, but I'm more concerned about what are the voters thinking about us?
April 1st.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think there's any putting out a vote with ballot, that stuff scratched all over, just seems to me as a serious mistake.
So I want to just point out, we did not create this.
Oh,
I don't think
This has been the most 25 years of doing school budgets. This has been by far the most challenging and confusing ever.
Our state leader still on the board. We have one at the table.
And Janice still here, yeah.
So, but we're trying to do the best we can. So I think all that feedback's really good. I'm just saying, we're literally trying to figure this out. This is like new stuff.
What day of the week is April 1?
April 1's a Monday,
Monday.
April 2 is a Tuesday. So we're looking at Tuesday. Just want to be really clear, just to go back. The finance committee was not talking about the date or the vote or anything else. The finance committee was only looking at the budget. So just to be very clear that that's the board decision separate from the finance committee. I don't want to get those two. Did you have something you wanted to say
Yeah,
before?
well, I had a question too. So if we change the vote to April 2nd, when do we have to warn?
30 to 40 days before.
I have those dates,
And would,
right there.
can we anticipate that the legislature is actually going to be completed with this vote that could still affect everything by then?
It's likely that the governor will sign it by the end of next week. could even be before that. So, yeah,
And I guess for me personally, and as, you know, a member of the finance committee, I don't see this not happening. To be honest, maybe there'll be some slight changes to it, and to me, maybe I'm just rushing it too much, but I feel like I'd much rather have a clear vision that we can continue to communicate and begin that process as soon as possible, rather than wait for it to go past everybody and then have to scramble to, during break, to begin to put the communications together for this.
Or we're also gonna have to have.
Allison
Oh,
had her
sorry.
hand up.
Oh, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Lisa, and I'm also looking forward to resolving some of this. And I just want to, again, applaud our administrators whose whole year, it seems, or at least since January 1st, has been hijacked by this insane process. But I don't have a lot of confidence that we're done with this, because there was, when did this pass? In July 2022? And we've now had a huge change in just like the past 5 days. So there's like 2 years it was sitting there, or maybe 18 months, that, you know, things are tinkering along. Everybody's rushing to make sense of this new reality. And then last Friday, it was moved out of one committee and, you know, across the aisle or across the other
To another
chamber.
committee, and It's
So
still,
this
it's
was-
still in the House.
It's still in the House. Okay. So, that timeline gives me pause. So I don't know. I mean, I also want to get this wrapped up. I feel really embarrassed when I talk to people in the community and can't give a straight-faced explanation about it. And then they say like, oh, no, it's not our fault. So I would like to have a narrative to share with people, but I also feel nervous about where we're at and how quickly this is changing and how complicated this is.
Heather? Katie?
Just to speak to what Allison is saying, I feel like as chair of Community Engagement Committee, it has been difficult trying to figure out how to really engage the public. And as I was sharing with Edie earlier today, I mean, I've made several appointments with different libraries around to try to find time to talk about the drama that was stirred up with just the first presentation of the budget. And then I called libraries and said, well, we want to keep the reservation, but please don't advertise it because they just changed the law, right? And then I called the library on Friday and said, well, now we can't even talk about this tomorrow because we don't know what's coming. So that is getting old. But I also do have real reservations about how we will communicate to people to come back out. I know that they said that people who required ballots, absentee ballots or ballots by mail, automatically emailed this new budget or budget vote. But they also said that even though they're trying to resolve this right now, that this is the beginning of changing Act 127 for next year. I mean, that was sort of how Emily Kornheiser presented the information. Like, we need to wrap this up because we have a tight timeline, but we're going to be talking about this. So I don't feel like the narrative can come from us necessarily. And I really look forward to a joint narrative created with our representation in Montpelier for the explanation to this for our community. Just wanted to say that.
Anyone online have, anyone remote, board members? Want to make sure I'm not ignoring you because my back's to you. Yes, Diane.
So I am happy with the number, the budget, as we discussed in the finance committee in terms of just the number. But I'm intrigued and very interested in pursuing this idea of delaying all decisions and doing it as one package, even though it's at an odd time of the year, and getting it done that way. I would like to explore that further. I think that that has some viability. I think I don't want to overly worry about the turnout on that. I think that people who are tuned into what's going on with the education system will be motivated to turn out for their kids, their community, our schools at that time. I think it might be good to wait but do the whole package then.
By whole package, you mean the officers and the budget?
That is correct. I mean, the officers then too, if we can manage to do an extension for the clerk that would tide over what central office needs, I would have the entire voting slate delayed until then.
Yeah,
We'll figure out.
yeah, we can figure that out, yeah.
Ethan and then Kevin.
I think I'm feeling very similar to Diane. I'm needing more information around what delaying might look like. I'm also very comfortable. Very comfortable with the number that the revised, the new budget. I think it's really important to note that the Act 127, the mechanism didn't work, and that our addition of that capital improvement money is money that we know we need to invest in our schools. And I think that there's a huge conversation to have about school spending, and whether it's new school construction or school improvement and repair and maintenance. And I guess I would throw out the idea of really advocating strongly, not just the board, but everyone that's here at this meeting and everyone that's listening or will listen, that we're not funding education enough. The bottom line about this is that we are pitting ourselves against each other in a budgetary battle. And it's the students and the community that we serve and our staff that are paying this price. So that's an aside, but I guess I don't know what it would look like around Diane's ask about what more information we need in terms of delaying a decision, and what would that time, I guess that, like, to me, that's like, what are those dates? And I think, John, you said you had some of that stuff available.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we did the vote on April 2nd, we need to have, for 40 days to warn it, and you gotta post it. We can approve the warning whenever we want, but it's gotta be posted. No more than 40, no less than 30. So, February 23rd is 40 days, February 27th is 35, and March 3rd is 30 days. I don't like to cut it to 30 because, we have 5 towns. We want to do it right. It's important. So we'd have to have schedule another meeting, and when it passes, and then generate everything off that, if that's the will of the board. What I would recommend, though, is we're supposed to have a meeting on Thursday, and I think that we would probably want to think about postponing that, and having 2 other meetings once we have the budget passed and we know we have something that's strong that we can share with people, instead of flip-flopping back and forth. I think we're going to confuse people more.
Kevin?
So, like, procedurally, where we are now and how do we get ourselves to adjourning today?
We still have 3 other agenda items.
Right. So I'm just trying to figure it out. It's a little bit of a game here, but I think because we have a second motion that we're discussing right now, feels like we could move that question to a later meeting. Kind of keep it, but not vote on it, just punt on that question.
We could, in theory.
Right. or we could, somebody could.
I'm
make
gonna
a
argue
motion.
against it in a minute. but we
Somebody
could,
could make a
Gary.
motion to move it,
Yep.
and then we could vote on moving it, so that we don't say yes or no to it, we just, or we decide to have a vote, and we say yes to reduce the 5.5, or no to keep it. We have to, that's one step. We resolve that budget question. And then we could take up another question about, the annual meeting date. Which today is the town meeting for the budget vote and electing officers and electing, school board members. And we could, push the date out, or we could like cancel it and come back and pick a date. But we have to take that action up as well to decide what are we gonna do about the date of the meeting. I think all the officers and school board positions probably are pinned to the meeting, not necessarily a date. You know, so I think if you slide the meeting, everything just kind of slides with it. But I don't know for sure. We want to check on that piece. But I think the way the bylaws are written, it talks about
Next
the
annual meeting.
annual meeting, not
Possible.
town meeting day. We happen to have our voting on
Oh,
town
yeah.
meeting day.
We no longer have an annual meeting.
We
got rid
do
of
have
that.
an annual meeting. It's done by Australian ballot at town meeting. That is our annual meeting. Just everything's decided by Australian ballot. We have,
Okay.
right?
Yep, okay.
So anyway, I would, I think we need to focus on the question, which is on the floor right now, around today, acting on the seconded motion of the revised budget. And then kind of wrap that up and move on to the next item.
Yep. And Heather had a hand up?
Yeah, I was just, make sure I have this all correct. You said that the governor, the end of next week might be signing it. That's the 23rd already. So, and then, John, you said that 40 days out was the 26th, 27th February. So
Yeah.
if we want to wait until the governor signs the bill, that gives us 3 days to then come back together and vote on it and then get it warned.
Which is
over February vacation.
in the middle of school break.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so like, my personal feeling is like, we're all here. We haven't had this many school board members present at a meeting, I think, all year. Like, if we're talking about the difference of a week, then to make a lot more work for everybody, I feel like makes the most sense on a bill that we know that he's gonna sign. Vote now, save ourselves a little more stress.
Is that what you're hearing, Edie?
Andrew, did you just take your hand down or do you still have a comment?
I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so what Heather just said is what I was gonna say. I think that I don't see another budget that makes sense for our district. This is a budget that was originally presented by John and Nicole. When we saw that we had room under the 5% cap and that we could put money into the district, into the schools, into the facilities, we said, yes, that makes sense. We should do that now. But this is the budget that came recommended from the district originally to keep our students whole, to keep our schools with the capacity that we need to teach students, which is why I feel comfortable that it is a budget that we had started talking about in December. We added money to it in January. So that's a reason that I think it makes a lot of sense to go forward with that budget, and why I was comfortable bringing it to the board today before the law is changed. Adding to that, what Heather so clearly said is that it is most likely that we won't have more information until school break, that the bill has been signed into a law and passed through all of the stages it needs to go through to become a law. And then adding to it, what John said is that February 23rd is the earliest that we would be putting the warning out, and March 3rd, which is during break, is the last date that we would need to post it. So we are either the Friday before school break, which the bill may or may not be signed by that date, or during school break to get the warning out. So that's the reason for having this meeting today with all of us here and having the opportunity to advance this budget and pick a date for the vote. So I would like this to be unanimous, and I don't want it to be something that folks are not comfortable with. So I want to have that discussion, which means perhaps we're here later than 8:30 tonight. And, you know, we don't have a lot of school board meetings that go more than 2 hours, but if that's what it takes today, then that's what it takes today. And if folks aren't comfortable with it, the next question would be who's available during school break to get together, because that would be our time to get together to actually make this decision. Diane.
So are you saying, I want to backtrack a little bit, that you want to decouple the votes in terms of like we're voting on the budget number as one vote, and then are we or are we not, under your proposal, voting on a new date of approval, elections, etc.?
We would do both. We would do them separately, right? Because we have a motion on the floor for the budget first, and then we would, vote to change the date.
And you want to pick that date tonight as well?
We have already polled the town clerks, and they have said that April 3rd is their preferred date, or April 2nd is their preferred date, Tuesday, April 2nd.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to be clear about that. Thank you.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. So I guess
I have a question. Yeah.
Yeah.
John, do you have any sense from your peers of what other districts are doing?
It's all over the place. It really is, because it just impacts districts differently. But there are some school districts that are gonna do a revote, particularly the ones that are losing as much tax capacity as us, because the alternative is terrible. So the ones that are in that sort of top third of losing tax capacity, many of those are revoting.
Revoting, which you mean a new budget?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is there any scenario in which like this gets jammed up somehow in Montpelier and then we lose the opportunity to make those capital improvements? Like we move forward with a budget that doesn't include that, and then this all goes bust and we don't have the opportunity to make the investments in our district, and we lose revenues down the line, which make it even more difficult to make these investments.
So that's a fair question. So if this, it's now called 850, House 850, doesn't pass, then we stay as we are under COVID rules, which means there is no deadline to vote. So we would be able to repeal whatever we put forward something new, and go back to this, yes, because we're under COVID rules. Yep. So, I mean, and I just want to go back to the first question that you had, because there are districts in the state that were incredibly conservative to begin with and kept their budget, didn't add any extra money if they had space in the cap. And those
that were also disadvantaged significantly by the new funding.
I don't know how significantly disadvantaged.
I think that's a key piece when we talk about whether people were conservative or not. I don't know that it's necessarily.
So no, not disadvantaged, but not significantly disadvantaged.
Okay,
Like
so they're not really
districts.
in our same situation.
Correct.
But they chose not to.
Correct.
Change their,
Correct. There are districts that have already opened up their budgets and cut things before the law was even changed, because they saw the writing on the wall and they said, we need to change something. We need to do something different. Okay. So the districts are all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Marcy, I think we're just in board discussion now. Sorry.
I can't say something.
We would have to get board. Let's finish the board piece and then we'll figure it out. Thank you though. Yes, Andrew.
I think my way of looking at this is that we're not looking at the writing on the wall, we're looking at the writing on the chalkboard. Until it gets printed and signed by the governor, it's all speculation. And I appreciate that it's not wild speculation by any means. I think that everybody's well intended. It sounds as though everybody's headed in a very similar direction. But I personally am hesitant to make any changes to our budget until the law actually changes. And this is kind of the situation that we're in every year, but on steroids. You know, every year we don't know exactly what the impact of our budget is going to be on our taxpayers. But here we are this year, and we don't know if or how the rules are going to change before I don't know. I can't even articulate how messy this is. But I personally feel that we need to wait until the law changes before we change our budget. The legislature made a mess of the voodoo box. I hate that word, but it seems to fit. And I think they need to change the voodoo box before we make a change to our budget.
Yes, I agree with you 100%, Andrew. I think that we should make all of our decisions based on the law. And right now, we don't have the new law. So I don't think we ought to speculate. I think we ought to, we know, all of us know that someone was not here made this situation. And the people that created the cap that was ruled inappropriate or an emergency are the same people that have created this new plan. And so I believe that our wise decision is simply, let's wait. They're going to give us 2 days or 3 days, whatever days we have. Let's use those days wisely so that we can appear to be thoughtful and deliberate. So I think we should table everything we can table tonight.
I agree with that. I agree with that conceptually. And I guess I'm right now just thinking I will not be able to be a participant over spring break, unfortunately. So I guess I could, if we do it virtually, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah, I could do it virtually. Okay. But I agree that we're just up against a wall that feels very difficult and unfair. I know fair is not really the discussion, but we were having a conversation when we met like a month ago where we were saying, should we make our changes now? Should we adjust our budget? And I think we came to a consensus that we wanted to wait for the target to stop moving before we took our shot.
I'm going to go to Kevin first and then Ethan.
Trying to think of something.
Gracie, I didn't see Gracie's
She was
before.
after that.
Yeah, I was after Ethan. Yeah, okay.
Something we haven't already said. I think tonight we could cancel the current vote.
We could.
We don't have to pick another date. We could just say that's, we're out of time. We have the ability with current COVID laws to say we won't, we'll let you know when we're going to have that meeting in the future. But the town meeting date doesn't work for us because it's not in our best interest to make a decision on the budget at that time. And we have the ability to just cancel it.
I think we have to reschedule. What I'm reading is at the meeting, our board must vote on rescheduling the date of the school district's budget vote to a later date. So we would have to do that.
So we can't go.
We can't just
indefinite,
cancel
but
without.
We can kick it out.
Yes.
To a reasonable date in the future and say that's when we're going to have our budget vote and other votes as well.
Yep.
If we so decide. Okay, and then at some point between now and that future annual meeting by Australian ballot, we're going to have to all sign a new warning. I think it's at that event where we actually decide the budget that we put towards the vote. Because we're signing the warning at that point, and we're signing an article that says, here's what we're asking voters to approve. I don't know what we're voting on tonight. You know, we're basically drafting, we're voting on a draft article that we will sign at a future point. And so that's why just going back, like, I don't think we need to make a decision on reducing our budget until we're actually signing the warning to a future meeting.
Usually we have them as two separate things. Usually we have approved the budget and then the warning as a separate item. So.
Yes, because it's hard to change the warning when it comes to the meetings. We want to make sure we have like agreement, but I think I recall times during the meeting, somebody having to go find a printer to print off the revision to the warning because we made a change.
Which we can now sign even remotely. So, I'm going to go to Ethan and then Gracie and then Lisa. Go ahead, Ethan.
I'll defer to Gracie. She hasn't had a chance to speak.
Oh, you can go. I'm good.
Thank you. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, though.
We have the mute button.
Yeah. I'm this is probably the problem with sitting at home attending this meeting remotely, thinking a lot in my own head here. As you said, Edie, school administration presented a budget that did not include a $5+ million infrastructure add-on, and that was a result of what we saw as an opportunity within Act 127. I wonder about voters seeing that, and 5% cap notwithstanding, would that be something that they would approve in a different year, right? A non-Act 127 year. And the question of bonding got thrown out there as well. And I'm just thinking about this decision about changing our budget and just trying to be cognizant of what voters are thinking in terms of, does this feel like the right budget? It was spotlighted because all these schools added this money, and instead of just our 5 million being thrown into the pot and it sort of being covered throughout the state, 250 million got thrown in there in a very difficult year. So I don't know if there's necessarily a piece there, but I guess I'm wondering how our district feels about just the $5 million add, regardless of whether it was capped or not.
I don't even know where to go with that.
I know, that's why I tried to defer to Gracie, but
I'm going to leave it out there and I'm going to go to Gracie.
yeah, thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I just kind of wanted to like reiterate what Gail and Allison said of like, we thought like a month ago, even like a couple weeks ago, that we had a set target, and then it changed so fast that is it wise of us to shoot at a moving target when in a couple weeks this could be signed into law and it can't be kind of like the rug pulled out from under us again? And I'm just pushing that to a meeting, and I know it'd be close to the date where we have to warn it, but pushing it to a meeting where they can't change it on us again may be beneficial.
No, we can do that. I hate to make these folks work on school break. We're volunteers. We'll pop in, they're working. That's one of their very few vacations. That's always something that I have in mind. So just throwing that out there as well. I am not hearing a consensus though. I'm hearing folks all over the place on this one. So I don't think we're going to get to a unanimous vote. Can we straw poll this one? Can I just see our folks who's comfortable making a decision on this now and who's not, so that we can.
Which decision?
All of it together, picking a date and picking a number. Are folks generally okay with picking a date and a number today, or do folks want to push that until the law has been signed by the governor?
Can I just ask one clarifying question?
Yes.
If for some reason something changes, I think I heard you say that the COVID rules would let us, like, we wouldn't be locked in.
Correct.
If we pushed this budget ahead or advanced this budget, changed the date, started moving down that track, if things were to, the circumstances were to change, we could make our own changes.
Correct.
At our own peril in the eyes of the voting public, to Gail's point.
Correct. Right. No, the thing that I've been struggling the most with is all of this causes everyone to lose faith in government at a time where faith in government is at one of the lowest levels that it's ever been. And so I understand, and we're in government here, and I hate that because I really believe in government. And so I understand that we are not in a good position, and none of us are. And we're trying to do the best we can in a time where everything is uncertain. And so, yes, all of that we have to take into account. And I don't want to set us up to be another, oh shoot, we have to change that again, because that's not good for anyone. At the same time, I'm not a fan of special meetings for something this big, because I don't want anyone to think that there's anything that's happening that is not being open and clear and transparent and available for information, because I think that's really important. So we don't have an easy decision to make. That's why we get paid big bucks. So yes, Ethan, go ahead. Sorry, was Andrew first? Did it?
Oh, is Andrew up there? I'm sorry. I think it's
So go ahead and then we'll.
Okay. I am very comfortable with your proposal, Edie, despite all of my question marks. I would also just point out there, and for those that are listening and that care, I actually think this conversation and this discussion is what is important about restoring the faith of government, because what we're doing here is having an honest conversation. We're working through very difficult and unclear ideas and decisions. And so, yes, it is hard to accept the fact that we might be changing the piece, or changing the timing, changing the budget, but we are doing it in an open, honest forum. And people should be excited that as many of us are here tonight concerned about it. So as a positive spin to the government struggles, while I don't like Act 127 and I don't like how it's all played out, I do feel like this process is really valuable. And it can show a lot about who we are and what we stand for. And I think that's good communication.
Great. Andrew?
Thank you. And I think that my view has changed as a result of not Ethan's last comments, but the comments before. And I think I think what he was pointing out is I recognize that I think I might have lost sight of the ball. I think in all the frustration about all the mechanics of what's happening with Act 127, what I might have lost track of is what's important for our district. And I think that delaying the capital funding, raising the capital funding in this particular budget might be the right decision for our district. And so that changes my view, in the sense that I think that the budget that has come as a seconded motion to us today takes out that funding. And I think that is something that we can, in good faith, present to our voters. So I've completely changed my view, and I think that we should go ahead with the seconded motion today, and continue on the course that we're on. Of course, that means we have to revise the I believe that means that we have to have a different day where the budget goes in front of the voters. But I do think that we should go ahead and reduce it.
Dave, I'm going to put you on pause the same way I put Marcy on pause because this is board discussion right now, and I'm happy to come back to you if the board is comfortable with that. So, Diane?
Yeah, and I would do kind of the opposite of what Andrew is saying, is I would make a decision on the new voting day today, and I would leave out the decision on the final budget until after the governor signs the law. So it sounds like we're moving all over the place with this.
Yes.
Andrew, I liked the last opinion you had before you changed it.
No more of those.
Should we take a pause to hear community
So,
comment?
I can't remember. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just gonna reiterate that I think that having almost the entire board here to vote on this, I think is important, and I'm not entirely sure that's gonna happen if we reschedule this vote. But that's all.
Did you have something, Lisa?
I guess, in terms of not changing the budget, I just don't know what we're waiting for. I feel like the budget that was presented originally before we added 5.5 million is what is there. It's what we've been talking about all along, and we saw an opportunity that we tried to take advantage of. I feel fairly confident that this opportunity is going to disappear. And we're much better off just tabling it for now and waiting for a later date when we can add it back into the budget.
I'm going to add to that because not only is that opportunity going to disappear, but because the yield dropped so much, it's not even as big of an opportunity as it originally appeared to be. So I think that's an important factor there. I heard a request to open the floor back for community comments. Is the board comfortable with that? Yeah. Okay. Marcy?
Yes, I just have to reiterate something that you said, Madam Chair, to the Finance Committee. And that is, from my observations of what a whole lot of the legislative hearings on this issue, I have never, ever in my life seen a bill that has been where all hands are on deck. It's moving fast. There have been some tweaks along the way, and which is only making it better.
It's been voted out.
It's been voted out.
Bipartisan, two committees
The Appropriations
unanimously.
Committee came in for a special session today just to get this bill passed. And the governor has even telegraphed his support for this bill. I just think there's no question that this bill is going to happen. And I think you all ought to be aware of that.
Thank you. Dave?
Yes, thank you. I'm listening to all of this and I'm just wondering what,
Dave, you haven't spoken yet, so can you state your name and your town?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
David Thomas, and I'm from Richmond. And it's just an observation because I'm listening to all of the dialogue, which has been great, but why couldn't you consider voting as presented with a condition of passage of the law?
Yeah, I would say we could, but we don't have to because we're under COVID laws, under COVID rules. If we weren't under COVID rules, that would be we could. I don't see, I'm looking at the guidance just to make sure, and I wouldn't want to do anything that isn't exact to the guidance because I wouldn't want to have to come back to this if we do something that isn't accurate. So, right, that would be a silly reason to come back, considering all of the other reasons we would have to come back. And I know you said that earlier to do that. So, you want to dig through it?
No, I'm just looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think could do something contingent, you know, right?
Exactly. You have all your votes.
You're right, you can do that.
Okay.
We generally though don't like to have decisions made that are contingent on something else happening. We've been guided by our lawyers when we put draft articles together for our district. They need to be standalone and not contingent on anything else. Again, we're voting on, we might be voting on changing a budget that won't actually have a result until it gets into another warning, which we will all individually sign. Which, so we, feel like we're going to vote on it twice anyway. So I would be okay with a conditional vote, on something like if the law passes the way everybody here says it's going to pass, as we've described, or is the board, acceptable to reducing the budget by 5.5 million? I think that's what Dave is suggesting as a an amendment to the seconded motion.
Katie, I have a clarifying question. Yes, thank you. Well, I don't want to suppose because that's what we're trying to avoid, but I just want to make sure that I am understanding you correctly. If we vote tonight to accept the budget that has been put forth and the governor says, no, we're going to leave the 5% cap in place, because of COVID rules, we can change our budget. Should we want to go back to where we were? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood, regardless of what about the dates that they put in there, needing to have a decision.
The date
we're
is
still
only if everything passes.
okay. Yep, great. Okay. I just needed to understand the COVID part of that.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we have a seconded motion on the floor to change the budget, to revise the budget to the $60 million, I gotta find the number. We have $60,123,048, seconded, brought here to the finance committee. I'm just gonna put it out there for a regular vote. All in favor for the board of approving the new budget, say aye, something. Two. I only see 2 yeses on the remote, and I see 3 here. That would be me. Okay, so that's not gonna pass tonight.
The nays as well, and the abstains, to make sure we have.
Sure. Pat, you're getting this, right? So that was 2, 3, 4, and I'm voting for it, so to pass. So put
Yes.
your hands back up if you're voting for the budget to go forward with at the 60 million at the $5.5 million reduction tonight. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. 6 board members and our 2 student reps are voting for that. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? Abstentions? Is that a tie? 6 and 6. Into overtime.
We have to take a roll or something.
That would be. Yeah, well, there were 3 on the screen and 3 here, so that's 6. So Pat, is that right? 6, 4, and 6 against, plus our 2 student reps for 4? You're muted, sorry.
And that was with no abstentions?
No abstentions, everybody voted.
Okay.
I think one board member did leave.
Yeah, we had a board member leave. We have a board member who's not here tonight because of a family emergency.
It's gonna be 13. No, we have one.
That means yes, you have 12.
with 12 total, so deadlocked, so it doesn't pass.
Yep,
Every
so
vote matters.
we could revote if folks think they're gonna change their thought. If I don't see a point to it, nobody wants to, I mean, so that's a. Okay, so we're gonna have to have a special meeting on this. Our folks and, can we, I think, public award meeting, at that meeting, your board was, vote to reschedule the date of the school district's annual meeting budget vote to a later date. So can I get a motion to change the date of the school district annual meeting and budget vote this year to Tuesday, April 2nd? I want to make sure that's the right day,
Yeah, good idea.
right?
Second.
I so move.
I have a
Better
question.
place.
I have a question.
Couple of-
It's, we have a so moved. I just need a second and then we can have a discussion on it.
Second.
Two.
Thank you. So moved by Gail, seconded by Lisa. Discussion. Heather has a question.
So I have on my calendar, our budget presentation on the 29th of February.
We're gonna have to postpone that one and the one that is for this Thursday.
And then this Thursday's finance meeting.
Yep, and that is the only time that we mail to the district about the budget, and those have been mailed and folks have them in their calendar.
And we reminded them of Front Porch Forum.
And we've reminded them on Front Porch Forum.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna want to get.
Yep. Tara.
Thanks. So I know John said the preferred day by the town clerks was April 2nd, and I heard Andrew earlier talk about what this takes with small towns. What's the latest we
The
could
15th of
actually,
April.
the 15th? So why couldn't we push this until like the 12th so that nobody is working during school break?
We could. So one of the things, again, I'm trying to factor in our district employees and what they're doing. I'm also trying to simplify things for our town clerks. And when we put it out to them, they said Tuesday, that's a general voting day. Those were the 2 Tuesdays in April. And that is what they have said is the better day for them. We're trying to accommodate all of that. So if that doesn't work for this board and we have to do something different, then we are just asking more of our town clerks.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Under current law, how far out can we push the date?
I think it's April 15th.
The COVID laws say you must
That
have.
I don't know. I'm not familiar. Right? They want to have.
Just to be clear, the April 15th date is assuming the law passes, we have to have a meeting by April 15th. But under current law, I don't think we know how far out.
Let me,
I think that
I've
they're-
asked the question and I think there's not a deadline. The question is, what does it take to get, let me see, I got to remember if I texted or emailed and who I got it from. I think it was, give me 1 second, please.
The state needs to have budgets so that they can look at them and set the right funding formula. That's why they set it at April 15th.
Right.
I think it might have been a phone conversation, so I don't think I have it.
I had
in
to
writing.
check it out.
Yeah, we'll have to look into
I don't know
that. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to postpone the date of the meeting for April 2nd. That can be modified to a no later than April 15th if somebody wants to make an amendment to the motion that's on the floor. Again, I'm going to go back to as much solid information as possible is better for everyone who is trying to get information out to our voters. And I'm just trying to make this clear and simple and easy for people to understand at a time where nothing is clear and simple and easy for anyone to understand. So we have certain things that we can do to make it better, right? We are at the moment. Yes.
So I think not having a vote on town meeting day and trying to get people to vote on something that is not clear and all that is the right thing to do. And it seems like April 2nd kind of kicks it out, roughly 4 weeks for enough time for things to happen and us to and make a decision on what we're going to vote on that day. Just want to be clear on what you moved and was seconded. Is it rescinding the warning for the current meeting? And therefore we're just setting a date for the meeting?
Board must vote on rescheduling the date of the district's annual meeting / budget vote to a later date.
Right. So are we saying by voting yes to this, that the current meeting and what we were going to decide at that meeting is canceled, rescinded?
And rescheduled for April 2nd. That's what's on the floor right now.
And so that particular article that talks about the budget number.
That is anything that we have on our district's annual meeting and budget vote, all of that.
And I would like to like decide as part of this that what was warned is no longer warned. We're picking a date that we're going to have a meeting. And then between now and 30 to 40 days before that meeting, we're going to come back together as a board and decide what we're going to do at that meeting. Like, I want to get the budget number off anybody's expectation that that's what's going to
There is not a number attached to this. This discussion is only about the date of the meeting. That's all that we're talking about right here.
And so the articles that were warned would be rescinded as part of this.
No, I don't think so. I think all we're doing right now is deciding to reschedule the date of our meeting. Then after that, we can follow guidance on revising our warning and posting. That would be September.
I got it.
We can't actually hear anything.
When.
All right, can you hear us now? Yes, great.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I don't know what the last thing you heard online was. Turn my camera back off. You can hear me though.
We can hear you.
No.
Yes.
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 You can hear me. I can't hear you, but you can hear me. Great. We're working on it. Technical problems here. We have the sound. Okay. Where to pause? People want to stand up and stretch or have a little dance party, go ahead, because we're on a pause.
I have chocolates over there.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I need some chocolate.
Oh, you can.
No, yeah, again.
Sure you want to.
No, we're good. I can do that. Good at that.
You are too late.
I know. Every day, I'm like, you're not making it sooner. Every day.
It's really wild.
Are we good?
It's just, you know exactly.
Ethan, can you hear me?
It's pretty amazing.
Can you hear me? Can you say
Yes, I
something?
can hear you.
I can't hear you.
15 elected officers. The 3 are accounted for in different ways. One of them is basically stepped down. And 2 of
You
them
can
are-
still hear me. You can hear me.
You know, you gotta have a majority of the board present. to have a seat. Make a decision, you need a majority of the
And can you
present,
say something, Ethan?
which needs to be.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you just turn the volume up? Okay, folks, we're getting ready to get back into the budget, into the board meeting.
6 of 12.
Is Chuck Lacey on the board?
No, we stepped down.
Okay. You can hear everything and just say one more, say hello again or something.
Hello, we can hear all of your conversations, so
All right, we can hear you. We are all set.
it's all recorded.
All of it's
Are we
recorded.
recording? We are.
Yeah, of course. We've been recording the whole time. Technical difficulties and all. Okay, so on the floor is a motion to postpone the vote till April 2nd. That is the motion that is on the floor. We would have to rewarn at a later date. Kelly, I see that you have your hand up. Board, are we comfortable with? Yep, go ahead, Kelly. And state your name and your town, please.
My name's actually Steve Diglio. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm
We
just kind of
sure can.
curious about the process a little bit.
Sorry, your
c-
town,
'cause-
Steve.
Bolton, town of Bolton.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So currently the only budget that has been passed is the budget that's currently on the ballots that have been printed, correct?
That's the only budget that the board has put forward, yes.
So that would still
It
be
has-
the budget that you're working under. So just process wise, wouldn't you have to rescind that budget? Or since, because the last motion did not pass, so the current active budget is still the one on the ballot, correct?
Correct. Yep, we are pushing the date out and we have the ability to change the budget amount at a future meeting. Yep,
But there's still a chance it could be the same budget that's on the ballots now.
yep.
So wouldn't it make sense to potentially go with it then? Or at least vote, or do you have to rescind the budget at this point too? Anyway, that was all I had to say. I was just kind of curious about the process and if the budget actually had to be voted down first.
No, the budget does not have to go to voters as it is. Currently, the board has not chosen to make any changes to the budget that we voted at our January 11th meeting. Is that the right date? No, it was later than that. It was the 15th. It was the week after that. So, it is likely that that will not be the budget that goes forward to voters. However, that decision is not going to be made tonight.
Yeah, but
Not there. So yeah, I mean, we can talk. I don't know that. I hear what you're saying, and I don't think it's something that we need to spend a lot of time talking about tonight, because I can see that it is another piece that could be confusing.
yeah, I was just wondering, since it was already passed, if that actually action had to be taken because that prior passed motion is now being challenged or potentially revised.
Yep, fair question, and answered, no, it doesn't have to be. Yep, fair question.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry to belabor the point. The way I'm interpreting it is if we change the date of the meeting, the warning is no longer valid because it has an old date on it. We have to come together and sign a new warning.
If I have the law in front of me, the COVID law, which I probably could look up, I could give you an answer.
don't think it's relevant.
Right.
I truly don't think it's something we need to spend time on. You can
So-
tell I'm like,
All I'm saying, is I'm not asking for clarification and I'm not asking a question. I'm just making a comment that the way that I'm interpreting what we're doing here by changing the date of the meeting, it basically voids the warning that has been sent out because it has a date on it that's no longer valid. And so I'm making my decision based on that fact, or not that fact, that assumption that the warning is voided. We're putting a new meeting out there. We're going to put a new warning out in time to warn that meeting. That's how I'm interpreting it, because we don't have any information at all.
are folks ready to vote on whether we should move the meeting date?
Yes.
Okay, motion on the floor is to reschedule the annual meeting and budget vote for April 2nd. All in favor? I'd like a thumb or an eye, please. How about a thumb so I can actually see it for longer? 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm seeing 11 board members, 2 students, looks unanimous to me. Just to be clear, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, unanimous vote. Thank you, everybody, to change the date of the meeting. I think at this point, we will have to wait until the official law is changed and signed and then get everybody together for a special meeting. A special meeting means 24 hours notice?
Yes.
24 hours notice. We will do our best to get folks together at a time that works for as many board members as can possibly be there. I think the point that today we have just about every board member here is an important point to make, and we'll do our best to get everybody together in a timely manner where we can get our budget warned and we can get information out to the community as clearly and quickly and efficiently as possible.
I have a procedure. So if we're going to change the budget, does the finance committee then have to get together and second a motion again, or?
The seconded motion is still.
Okay.
Yep, the board, yeah. If the finance committee would, I guess it would probably be helpful to understand if folks aren't happy with the actual numbers or something else. And if folks aren't happy with the actual numbers and work needs to be done to bring it forward to pass the board, that would be important to know. You know who voted how, and you want to reach out to them, or do you want to have a conversation about that right here?
No, I'd rather wait until we have more information.
Okay, but I guess if folks think the budget is too high or too low and would like the budget to be changed a particular way, please let me know. And I'm talking board members, because that's work that would need to be done in addition to that's work that would need to be done, and the finance committee would need to meet before we have a board approved budget, right? So that's really important at this point. Andrew, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Edie. I mean, I think procedurally, since that vote failed, that second in motion is gone. When you create the warning for the special meeting, I think it would be entirely appropriate for you to put on the agenda, you know, an item where we discuss the budget, and it's entirely likely that somebody would propose in that case exactly the budget number that we voted down today, and my guess is that the vote would go differently at that future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this topic? Okay. The next item on the agenda is to discuss board compliance of governance management connection and governance process. Is the will of the board to have this discussion now or to table it for a future meeting?
Table.
Hearing from folks in the room that they'd like to table it to a future meeting. Are folks remote online feeling the same?
Who wants to do it now?
Yeah.
The rest of the agenda.
Okay, do we want to have committee reports tonight? Do we want to table that for our special meeting also, or the next board meeting? Is
Yes,
there anything that needs to be shared tonight?
Is there anything pertinent that we need to know?
Yep,
I
that's
feel
what I'm
like this
asking.
committee needs to say something.
Okay.
We need to have a meeting before our next meeting, which is scheduled, I think, for March 11th. So
So Katie's gonna be reaching out to the community engagement committee to set a date for a meeting so that we have a plan on how to notify our voters of what's going on.
exactly. Yes.
I think we need more input rather than just those of us who are here. So, how will we engage with the rest of our board to understand what your feelings are about how we should communicate this? This is a big lift, and we are,
Oh, for sure.
we are a few ladies who get together from Richmond. Not that ladies can't do it all, but we need some more input.
So it
And
sounds,
Gail as well. Gail, sorry. You're not a lady and you're not from Richmond.
it sounds like there's a request to, at our special meeting where we vote on what our budget will be, that we also have a discussion on how to share the information with voters. And I think that's gonna be it's gonna be a full board anyway, because finance meetings are being changed. And I think that the request now would be for community engagement to help, and the district to help share that those meetings that we have sent letters out to folks to say, come and join us on this Thursday, and 2 Thursdays from now are now not going to happen, right? So I think that that's really important that we start working on that.
So that's probably an immediate front porch forum.
Yeah.
Post.
And we'll put something tomorrow on the website, like boom.
And it's,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask for the 29th. I mean, let's say all of this magically happens and by next Friday, Governor Scott has signed the bill and we vote by Monday or Tuesday. Wouldn't we want to still have a meeting on the 29th?
Cause, I mean, if we have stuff, we'd still have to have another budget informational meeting within 10 days of the vote. We can,
So we just
we
wanted
can
to,
talk
it's
about that.
possibly postponed or stay tuned for further
I
details.
would recommend we cancel it because it's during school break. And it's the one that has always been a challenge to get attendance for and to prep for. So I would, even though, I mean, if we're post 21, we might as well postpone both. That would be my, Heather.
Given that we, at the school board, have all been aware of this date, maybe is that a date that we can try and have a meeting? For like a vote or discussion on how we're like, finance committee or, it's like, in theory, most of us have blocked it, it's already on our calendar, right?
Thursday, the 29th.
Yeah, if we're trying to get the whole board back together to have a vote.
Yeah, it wasn't a date that board members had to be at. It was an information meeting.
Yeah.
I'm actually not going to be easily available that day, but I would be remote. But we could definitely, if folks generally have that date and time blocked out, that's a good option for our special meeting. So we'll put that as high on the priority list. Yeah.
Sorry, can we just recap next steps on communicating this in the community? So Katie's gonna do a front porch forum post.
Connect about dates and times and we'll do a front porch forum post. I'll send it to everybody to post.
Is there any other bases that we need to cover?
John's gonna put it on the website and get it pushed out to all the school, newsletters, the school newsletters. I mean, it takes time. They don't all go out at the same time.
But we'll get it pushed out.
So this will be like the updates that some community members have been like asking for, like, what do you guys doing it next. Like, this is,
And we're saying we're not doing anything next, please wait.
we've made a big decision here to move out the date to allow us more time for the expected things to happen.
Yep. It's a better way to put it.
So, but maybe just a quick recap of the expected changes. And then that we have chosen to move the date of the vote and that the following meetings are canceled.
Yep. And I can help you.
Yeah.
Katie, just,
Yeah.
we have our memos, we can put something together.
Awesome.
I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Okay, thank you.
But I think we should compliment those folks that did a nice job of writing, describing the last system of the budget and account. There's some very well-written descriptions of what could have been.
Yeah.
I didn't choose to do any writing, and I don't think I am now either. But some did.
Great. Okay, so we'll, postponing other committee reports. We have a, previous meeting minute that needs to get approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from January 22nd, 2024, please?
So move.
Thank you. Moved by Kevin, seconded by Katie. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor, thumb, hand, opposed? Abstentions? One abstention? Yes, Diane, one abstention? I don't know if she's delayed or if she's.
Nope, I just didn't get my hand up to approve in time.
Okay.
But I'm gonna yes approve.
Great, unanimous approval. Great, thank you. Any other business?
No.
Still a hand raised on the screen.
It's been raised.
One last thing.
Other business, yes.
Can somebody, get confirmation that elected board members' terms don't expire until our new meeting date? Just so when we're having.
I don't think that. Because those are by the town, not our ballot.
Yeah, so they will be voted on
They'll be voted on.
at town
They
meeting.
will be voted
Yes,
on.
because they are part of the town ballot.
That's the town
So
ballot.
those will be voted on. So we could have, yes. Yes, those are all taken care of.
Only the budget, okay.
Only the budget
So we'll-
and
we can-
the
And then so we'll have
moderator,
new
treasurer,
board members.
and
this
clerk.
process. Okay, thank you.
Yep, that's a good question to clarify. Other business?
So February 29th would be a good date.
Other business? No? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Please vote by leaving. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in this difficult meeting tonight, and I'll see you all later this month, I hope.
Thank you.
Oh, sure, yeah. Thanks for coming and sticking it out.
Thank you. Have a good night.